Hello and welcome back to Down the Slope. We got a different episode for you today. If you're watching on YouTube, you can notice that we've got quite a few faces on the screen because we're going to be doing our transfer special. We've just hit January. It's actually our second episode since January started, but this week we thought we'd dive into some of the transfers. We're about just over a quarter of the way through the window. And joining us, we've got McBee, Dave, and Marcus, as well as Leon. Marcus, tell us how your new year was and talk to us about your thoughts on Nick Montgomery.
New Year's class. Went uptown, cut about with mates. Nothing too flashy, but in terms of Hibs, it's not. It wasn't a good December. I feel like December is never a really good month for us. Again, I'm understanding with Montgomery the squad he's got that he's not really. I feel like he's got his style of play. He's got them doing it. I don't think he's got the personnel to make it work at the minute. Um, I think that the poor results that we're seeing, it's just kind of, it was always going to happen at some point. Like we started off okay, maybe picking up draws in games that we should have lost and here and there, but it was always going to happen. It's always kind of on a downward turn. So I'm just kind of brushing it off at the minute. Yeah, it's not ideal, but just kind of have to live with it at the minute, suck it up.
Yeah, but hopefully after we've had this episode and we talk about the 17 million transfers that we're bringing in, we'll all feel in higher spirits. But the man who was globe-trotting and has more Hibs memorabilia than I've got brain cells, McBee, how are you doing? Thoughts on Montgomery?
Good, mate. Really good. Thoughts on Monty. Well, I was championing him coming in the door in the first place, but it's mixed bags. But I think we can all see he clearly wants to play a certain system in a certain way. I think most people can appreciate he's just not got the personnel as it stands right now to facilitate that. So you've got to give the guy time, and you've got to give the players a chance to try and could adapt to what it is he's asking for them as well.
And then another one of our joining faces today, Dave, how are we getting on and thoughts on Monty?
I'm very well, mate. My thoughts on Monty remain the same as when we took him on. I think Hibs knew exactly what they were going for. They knew the style of play. They knew the system he wants to play. What we can't have is just fans saying we need to move to 4-3-3, we need to move to 3-5-2 or whatever nonsense they come out with next week. This is the system we've got. We just need to get the players to play that way or change them. Simple as that. And stick with the manager for a couple of years.
Hey, and last and certainly not least, Leon, are you of the same mindset that we need to kind of just get with the system here, or do you think that Monty might have been too rigid so far? You are on mute, by the way. That's all that tech stuff, guys. Still going on in 2024. Wait for it. At the bottom left, there's a wee microphone. Sorry, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see Leon disappearing and reappearing. If you're listening on, there we go. We got him. We got him. Leon.
I thought you were muting me, mate. Hi, listen, I'm all for giving the guy time and the manager time. Obviously, I'm sick of chopping and changing managers, and we need to have an identity and stuff. The only thing is we need to, after January, essentially, we need to start motoring. My whole opinion is bringing a new manager was I didn't want this season being chucked away and just giving it like a total, oh, we've got a new manager and let's just wipe this season off and start again. So as it stands, give them time, but results do need to improve.
Yeah, absolutely. And then talking to some of our guys that have been here for a while, we got Liam and Greg coming on. So obviously we got the guys' opinions on Montgomery. I think it's all fair to say we're in the same boat of we like him. We're probably slightly frustrated because when he came in, we got a couple of good results. And then Marcus touched on it a bit earlier. It was a pretty disastrous December. Nice wee bit of alliteration there. But Liam, in terms of the system, what type of player at the moment do you think's missing from the current squad that can kind of pull the team together and make the system work a bit better?
Just one type of player.
Well, you can give me the whole spiel if you want, but I was going to come
I'll start. Well, maybe
Ryan
just
for
go
one
around
as
the
well.
table and we can all spit out something. I think the obvious thing that's missing for me is a box to box sort of midfielder. If you're going to play a 4-4-2, I think you need a guy who's going to crash from box to box, who's got the energy to cover the horizontal and the vertical. In midfield, we're pretty much every team we play against in this league goes with three central midfielders because most teams play 3-5-2, a variation of our 4-3-3. So your second man in midfield needs to be able to do the running of almost two players essentially, and that's what we're asking someone to come and do. So they need to be ultra fit, ultra determined, motivated, and they probably, to be honest, given you've only got two guys in the centre of the park that can receive the ball, needs to be good on the ball as well. Needs to be able to play on the half turn. Needs to be able to swivel. Can't just be the sort of centre midfielder who can only kick it the way he's facing. It's a huge ask at a club like ours because there's not a huge number of midfielders who can do all of those things in one player, and that's the problem that you run into when you're asking a guy to essentially do the job of almost two players in the centre midfield. They do exist, those players, but they tend to be probably a little bit out of our price bracket, to be frank.
And Greg, speaking of that, how many changes do you think that we are away from actually getting this system with Montgomery to work? We've seen in phases, like even the first half over the Motherwell game, we've seen that we can definitely play the way that he wants us to, but sustaining it over a full game's been a struggle. So how many signings do you think we'd actually need to make to see this kind of fall into place?
I think what you need is, first of all, you need the players to sort themselves out. And they've also let the manager down recently. They've not been good enough, but in terms of signings, you're probably 4 or 5 away, to be honest. If the manager is to be successful.
Fair enough. And then Ryan, coming to you last and certainly not least, hope you had a magic new year, my friend. In terms of this window, how many signings are you expecting? And do you think that we'll be able to secure players that will be able to make an instant impact on the first team?
I think it's been stated numerous times that January is a hard window to operate in. Montgomery himself has said that the quality of player that we probably need are all currently playing at their clubs, so it'll be hard to bring in that quality in January. But I think there'll still be 2 or 3 signings. I mean, it's definitely needed. Look at the squad depth, and we're letting some of the younger guys go out on loan that would be filling the bench. So I'd still be hoping for 2 or 3, albeit there might be a couple of loan signings, which isn't ideal, given that there's probably not a great success rate. There's some that have worked out and some that haven't, but I'd still be hoping for about 2 or 3 to improve the squad instantly.
Nice. And then just in terms of the current scope of the squad, we sent Ruben McAllister out on loan. There's currently been no incomings. Obviously, Melkerson left before the window. And then Malid Zek, I believe his name is, went to Edinburgh City, but he was out on loan before that anyway. And in terms of coming in, the only solid transfer we've seen is a centre-back from Leeds. Looking around to see if anybody in the room is aware of the player that we're looking at, or if not, we can just move on. Apparently, a centre-back from Leeds is on the cards, but it is a player that's not made a senior appearance, but he has played like 60 times for the Premier League 2 squad. So maybe he'll be a Will Fish 2.0 and he'll come in and he'll be magic, but we won't talk too much about that because
he is decent. Oh, sorry, Harry, just
yeah.
decent. I watched 3 or 4 of his games when it was mentioned a few days ago. Always, obviously, just playing under 23s, but it's still a decent level. He's physical, he's tall, decent in the air. That's why I was surprised when people are calling him a right back. He looks actually too tall to be a right back. He looks about 6'2", 6'3". And he created a couple of chances as well as scoring a couple of chances corners. So yeah, I wouldn't be against the whole idea that it could be another Will Fish type. So I know Hibs, they said they're looking for ready-made players, and then they mentioned him. So I wouldn't be against him coming in, to be honest. He's not left-footed though.
Sorry. Matt, a friend of mine's a season ticket holder at Leeds, and he says he's quite highly rated. He says he'll probably struggle to get in the Leeds side due to how strong they're at the back. The only thing is, he also told me that if O'Kenna was a top player and would smash it at Hibs, so I'm still not sure how his opinion holds up.
Well, that is fingers crossed then that we get him in, and then we'll get you guys to comment when he's actually here, and you can ask your mate / Dave, you can watch another few games and keep us posted. But for the rest of the show, as mentioned, it's a transfer special, so we're going to get stuck in. We've all kind of done scouting. Greg has done scouting across Europe for the last few months, so he's going to just kind of comment on other people's recommendations. But we've got our special guests on to bring a couple of players each, and then myself, Liam, and Ryan have also done the same. And first up, as mentioned, he's been around the globe and back. He is a connoisseur of collecting, but let's judge him on how he collects players for Hibernian. Mick B, talk to us about what position we need to cover and who you're bringing in to cover it.
I'm delighted you've come to me first because I'm sure one of the names I'm about to spout out, Dave probably had on his list as well, right? So, my first one, because I think that the huge problem we see is the middle of the park here just now. I think Joe Neal's had a semi-decent season so far, but whoever's come in to partner him at the same time, I don't know. I don't know if it has worked. So you already mentioned earlier about a true box-to-box midfielder, and it's somebody that Monty will know really, really well. Is a lad at the Central Coast called Josh Nisbet. So he is exactly what you talked about earlier, a proper box-to-box midfielder. Bit diminutive in terms of height. He's only 5'3", but considering how good a season the Central Coast had last year, and you saw moves for Jason Cummins, the boy in the wing, that Sammy Silvera that's away to Middlesbrough. This guy actually got Player of the Year for the club as well, and it wasn't sort of properly understood and noticed. So listen, if he's got a chance in the weeks ahead, providing Hibs didn't go in for him, get your Saturday mornings on TNT Sport and see if you can watch this lad, because I'm telling you now, he's a very, very, very good player. And when you hear interviews coming from that side of the world, they're talking about him being ready to go to Europe. So he would be my first pick.
And I reckon with players, it's probably easier if we just kind of do player by player as opposed to giving two and then jumping back.
Aye.
In terms of, is there any comparisons you can make? With Giando Fuchs came to mind. Obviously, I'm a massive Fuchs ambassador. Would that be a similar comparison, or are they slightly different players?
No, I'd say a fairly decent comparison, but I'd say he probably gets Nisbet gets forward a lot better and likes up probably a bit better. And he's maybe not as stocky in the build as well as what sort of Fuchs is. But listen, a very, very talented laddie, seriously talented laddie. He was at Spain. He was in, I can't remember, Dave, was it Valencia or somebody that looked up the Spanish? Spanish loved him, he was over there for a few years. So very, very, very gifted technically. And listen, as I say, just a top player all around. And I think would be probably the perfect foil to go into midfield for somebody like Newell as well, to get the best out of each other.
He's got loads of physicality as well, even though he's small. He doesn't get pushed off the ball easy. He's a right hard wee nut, to be honest. And I think he'd be a good addition.
And as I say, looking at the manager, it's as less a risk as you can take, considering he's known them and managed them for the last couple of years as well.
And then only other question from me, if he, like, I'm not doubting that he is as good as you're saying, but would we potentially be priced out of him then if he is that good?
I'm not so sure. I'm sure his contract's up in the summer as well. No, didn't quote me 100% on that, because some other player I was looking. It is.
His contract
up,
right?
Definitely. So it'd be a few $100,000.
Aye, that's not bad. Nice. And then also, I should have said before we got into it, come the end of everybody giving their players as a collective, which is going to be Carnage, we're going to pick 3 players that we're actually going to add in January as a team. So remember that as we're going through, guys, and take your note. And if you join us on YouTube as well, let us know in the comments. But B, you've given us Josh Nisbet. I'm assuming it's Nisbet, not Nesbit, that I've already seen some people type wrong on the old Twitter. But give us number 2.
Number 2, I'm going to, before I give this name, right, when I was doing this, I was putting some names together last night. I'd done it before. Pat McParlin put his article out in the Observer about what's wrong with Martin Boyle, and he kind of cut my argument off at the knees in terms of saying he can't play up front. Like, based on like his stats this season, he looks to be far more effective out in the wing, right? So I looked at that today and I thought, he's kind of done me up like a kipper. But actually, you know what? I'm going to stick with my thinking, and I'm going to say Danny Armstrong at Kilmarnock on the right wing. Now, this is a lad I know the club have fancied for a while as well. I think Kelly are looking to cash in, whether it be this window or the next. But there's a lad that's got 4 goals this season. I think it's 7 assists. Pretty consistent, and you know what? okay, Martin Boyle might be more effective up front, but I do sometimes wonder if it's because there's nobody as good as Martin Boyle that's playing on the wing to supplement chances for him as well. Whereas I actually think this lad probably would. So when I was looking at this last night again, I think I saw unsubstantiated fact being put on the internet that Kelly would be looking for something like $500,000 for a guy that's got 18 months on his contract. But again, a lad that's pretty consistent and proven in this league. And as I say, I wouldn't be against, him coming in and maybe freeing Boyle up front. The other thinking behind it is, and again, it's something I'm sure we'll talk about, I think over the last couple of games, Ewan's proved he's got to play, right? He's got to play. And I think when you saw bits and pieces how well him and Boyle have actually linked up. If you look at the equaliser against Hearts, for example, there was a similar goal that's been scored, and I was trying to find it before I came on. I think their link-up's actually really, really good. So that's my thinking. If you're due on one side, probably you'd have to come off the left, in fairness, if you were going for Armstrong. But as I say, Armstrong would be my pick for the right-hand side, and that would give Boyle the chance to go up front, and it gave him the opportunity to stretch defences. Like you saw the goal he got chopped off against Aberdeen. His pace got him that, despite the fact that it's obviously got called offside. But that's my thinking there. And as I say, I kind of got done up like a kipper for Pat with his article last night, but I was like, nah, I'm sticking to my guns. So there you are.
Back down, double down.
That's it, double down, mate.
That's it. And Greg, what do you make of that, Greg? The idea of Danny Armstrong coming in this window.
I would be against it, to be honest. Probably a position that we need somebody. Boyle's not been good enough, so even a bit of competition for him out wide or stick him through the middle, bit of support for Vente. But yeah, I do like the sound in Nisbet though. He seems like a really, really good player. So yeah, exciting talent if we can get him in.
And obviously, as a player that's kind of been touted on and off for a while, is there anybody that doesn't like the idea of Armstrong, or would we all be comfortable with that signing if we made it?
Well, want more than grand, surely, no?
They would want what's more than 500, did you
More
say?
than 500 grand, I think. I think they want $1 million more than us, so which I don't think they'll get. But I wouldn't be against getting them at all. I think we need more than one player for a position, so that when we make a sub, we didn't suddenly go down by 60%, which is what happens at the moment. Right? There's certain players that are playing week in, week out that really shouldn't be. So
I'm not mad. I'm not mad on it, to be honest, Harry, for the reason that I think if we're going to pay that kind of fee that we're talking about, it needs to be someone who's going to be a guaranteed starter. And I would maybe take a wee bit of convincing that he's better than the options that we've already got in those areas. Obviously, Kelly's form in the league and where they're sitting, they're above us with a smaller budget. So you could say a really arbitrary look. You could say, oh yeah, he would get into the Hibs team, but I would need some convincing that he's better than Ellie Yuan and better than Martin Boyle. And I'm not saying he would necessarily play the same positions, but I think what we need is someone through the middle who is someone who's going to complement Dylan Vente more than what we're doing at the moment. And I don't think Boyle's that player, and I don't think Armstrong's that player, and I probably don't think Yuan's that player either.
So essentially, we need a significantly better winger, in your opinion, as opposed to a equal to or slightly better than.
Maybe, I think if we're going to spend money, it just ultimately needs to go to players that are going to play on the pitch, and it needs to be for starters. And it's probably, in my personal opinion, it's probably not an area that I would highlight as being one that we need to go to first, because I think the options that we've got in there at the moment are decent. I think what you'd be doing with that area would be providing yourself with maybe some other squad options that were relatively low cost, like loans, for example, who would come in and compete for a place.
Nice. And okay, so McBee, in terms of reading the room, your first one was definitely a bullseye. Everybody seemed to be fully on board with that. And then your other one, I was going to try and do a darts reference, but I've watched enough darts that I don't know references. So the second one, you've hit a 20 as opposed to a triple 20. There you go. So not terrible, but not your best work is what the room's saying. Are we happy with that assessment, McBee?
I'm all right with that. I'm just thinking we're rolling about in Foley's millions, which is why a wee cheeky half 600 grands can no issue at all to Hibs.
Perfect, love it. And we're going to someone who we've had on a couple of times before, but he's been roaming around Europe looking. Or I don't know if he's just been roaming around the UK looking. But Marcus, we're coming to you next, mate. Talk to us. Where's the holes in the team that we can fill, and who's going to fill them?
But it's been mainly Scotland I've been roaming around. So
I think that Marcus might have frozen at a very wrong time there. Just
is
you're
that
back. You're back. Sorry, you froze for a second. On you go. On you go.
perfect? I was saying I've been mainly roaming around Scotland, not venturing too far, but I was thinking mainly about the defence and up top. Ideally, I'd want a centre back, but I think another kind of glaring hole is maybe right back. I'm not too sure we're going to recall Megwa. It's still kind of 50-50. I was looking at maybe, I'm not too sure how popular this will be, but Ralston from Celtic, because he's obviously not starting every game for them. I think he maybe fills a bracket for them where we put Louis Stevenson and Hanlon in for us, where he gives it all every game, but he's maybe not technically to the point where they'd want him starting. I'd say he's about the level of your kind of Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen. The only thing that would put me off is the price. I'm not. They would probably want a good 400-500 grand for him, if not more. From what I've seen of him, he always puts in a good shift. Like just as a player to have in at right back, Miller's form's dropped a wee bit. I wouldn't be against him coming in, but again, there's probably better options out there in England further afield than just Ralston. But if we're looking at just Scotland, that's probably who'd have filling it right back. In terms of up top, we've had a few injuries with, Alexa Doige, Lafondra as well. I know Wraith are flying this season. I wouldn't be against Lewis Vaughan because he's always I've caught Wraith whenever they've been on. Harry's a fan of that. I've caught Wraith whenever they've been on like the kind of the Friday night games like BBC. He's physical enough. He like in terms of linking up with Vente, if we want Vente just kind of sitting up top in his own, not having to drift in out wide or in the midfield, I think Vaughan would be a good kind of partner for him. I know Vaughan used to kind of play more on the wings for Wraith as well. So if we need to, he can even drift out wide, drop in the middle. I think he'd be a good option there. And I'm not sure if he's top scorer for Wraith, but I know he's up there this season. So those would be my two.
Nice, I like it. Two Scottish players in the Scottish system that clearly know the league. We'll touch on Ralston first. Leon, I did notice that you kind of nodded in agreement slightly when Marcus first mentioned. Did I catch that right? And what do you think of Ralston?
I think Ralston would be a good option if you can get him in, definitely. He plays well for Celtic when he plays, and he's obviously not going to like game time. It's definitely the type of areas you want to be looking at, especially for loan signings. For me, if you can get players that have actually played in this league, that's a massive bonus because you would get them in and get them hitting the ground running right away. I think the big issue with pulling people in for other countries, other leagues and stuff is just settling them in, and I feel like we've not really got the time for that. We've got a lot of big games coming up, and I think we need the reinforcements ready to go like right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then Ryan, yourself, from what you've seen of Ralston over the years, I believe once he shouted at Mbappe, which got him quite a bit of clout across the internet. But in terms of his actual play, do you think that he would be a step up on Miller if we were to bring him in?
So he's played at a higher level. He's probably played more senior games, a wee bit more experience. He's quite rough and rugged. Again, not a technically outstanding player, so I'm not sure if spending that kind of money on somebody that's not the polished kind of jewel would be the best way to go about it. But he probably has a slight upgrade on Miller, so depends where you want to spend your money. But I'd probably be looking for a wee bit more on that kind of money, and I'd probably expect he's on quite a decent wage being at a club like Celtic.
Anybody else comments on the old Anthony Ralston?
Signed a 4-year deal in September, so I think we might be toiling.
I think he'll be alone to the end of the season though if he's not breaking in. I do think we'd be an okay because I think he went to St Johnstone a couple of years or maybe a few more years than that back. After he'd actually played a few times for the first team. I think realistically, as you've both kind of touched on, financially maybe not the easiest option to bring in, but I definitely think loan wise because Lewis Miller, I don't want to dunk on players, but he had a rough month last month. I think it's fair to say he did not look good, but he's away for one, so who cares? And then yes, Lewis Vaughan. I actually touted him about when we first started. I think the first transfer window after we started the podcast, I touted him, and then he broke his leg and was out for 9 months. So he's kind of went under the radar since. Liam shook his head there. But Lewis Vaughan, I am a fan. I think, as you said, he's got a physicality to his game. I think he is actually quite a good finisher. The only thing is he's not really had any season where he's scored like a really strong volume of goals in the 1 year. That's the only, because I was going to say him a couple of weeks back, but then I looked at his actual stats, and I think obviously you can't judge everything not just off the stats that I test, and my opinion is always more important. But he's never had a season, I think, above 12 goals, which if you're stepping into the Premiership only scoring like 8 to 12, it's a good return, but
he doesn't
normally
really
for that
play as an
step
out and
up.
out striker though, Harry.
Yeah.
He's not a striker. He's more of a sort of like second off the front man sort of winger kind of
Yeah,
player. And he's done his ACL 4 times.
ACL,
Although he's
sorry.
broke his leg, so he's the only man on earth to have done their ACL more times than me. So he's Hibs fan. I think Greg will probably know. He is a Hibs fan. So I mean, he's one of the sort of player who gets linked all the time. He's a great player. He's a good player to watch. Like, but I don't know.
Say as well, if you can get yourself back through 4 ACLs and play at the level he is, that mentality is strong as.
Very good point. Greg, if you, it seems like you might be familiar with him then. Thoughts?
I know who he is. I don't really. I don't watch him. But yeah, I think I don't know. I think I probably want a little bit more out of a striker. But yeah, what do I know?
Yeah. And Dave, you're looking questioningly. I don't know if that's about Vaughan or about Greg not knowing about Vaughan.
No, I'm just. If we're getting money in for bloody throwers, I may as well just chuck it, to be honest. But there you go.
All right, well, Marcus, apparently you've been fired as Dave's scout. I liked your 2 shouts. I enjoyed them. So that's all in good fun. And don't worry, if anybody calls you out, Marcus, we'll put them on the hot seat. So Dave, you obviously have been searching for perfect players that are coming in and making an instant impact. So let us know who are we going after.
It's funny, Harry. See when you get guests on, normally everyone's sort of too polite with each other to disagree with one another. Right? You just put Dave in there and he just rude as fuck to everybody. It just breaks the ice.
It's been nice. It's just forward. I've got a guy called Paul Hanlon here. He'd be quite good. Right, hang on. Right, so I went for two players who I think could be available to us. One is actually just become a free agent, and from what I can find, anybody I've looked, I didn't see anybody that's actually made an offer to sign him. He's currently playing as a centre back in Helsinki. Matti Peltola. He played centre back against Aberdeen, where he was exceptional. He's not the tallest. He's just over 6 foot. He finished up on the 1st of January. He was rated about 500 grand. His stats are exceptional. His stats against Aberdeen were outrageously good. Won 5 out of 5 tackles, 7 interceptions, 10 recoveries, and he's also rapid. So there's a feeling that he'd actually be better as a DM, and he's played DM for them a few times, and I actually think he could be the 6th player that we're missing. He's very skillful. He is robust. He, as I say, tackles well. He dribbles well. His long-range passing is good. Short-range passing is good. And he is somebody who, at the age of, I think he's 21, right? I think he's 21, right? I think he's a player that we could turn into something that's going to make us a few million quid, to be honest. I think he'd be very, very good in our league. So that's the first one.
Well, being honest, I don't want to speak for everybody, but you've spoke about a boy whose name I don't think I'll even attempt to pronounce. But I think I'm already in love with the idea. Everything you said ticked a lot of boxes for me as you went on. McBee, we'll come to you on that. That sounds pretty decent.
Keep moving. I can't even remember the laddie's name. What he just said.
Matti Peltola. He's a funny looking laddie, to be honest. He's not going to win any calendar awards, but he's certainly a player for what I've seen. But I'm surprised. I thought some of you guys would know him.
He's in the Finnish League Team of the Year, though. I found that much out about him, Dave. So he must be a player. Finnish League Team of the Year.
Can't about Italian teams sniffing about him, but I'm assuming that'd be like Division 2 in that, but not the top league. But he does look. He looks the part, and as I say, he's really rapid. His recoveries were really good against Aberdeen. Every time they got past him, he was the one that was getting back and blocking them or winning the ball back. So I think he's a baller, and we should absolutely go for him. And I want him on a 4-year deal in January. The The other one is another one from kind of that kind of the world. It's Magnus Grodum, Mulder, who Liam will probably know, because he follows all that kind of shite. He's a centre mid, attacking mid. Handy. The fans don't like him for some reason, despite the fact that as a centre mid, he's scored 7 goals, he's got a bunch of assists, scores with his head, scores with both feet. Certainly more of an attacking player than a defensive player. And I think could potentially be the kind of player that would do some kind of false 9 area. He's got a bit of height, about him 6'3", out of contract June 2024. Could probably get him cheap, I would imagine. And that's it. There's a bunch of frees out there as well, which would be absolute gambles. People like Lever, defender at Reading. He's no played because of injury, but he's back fighting for a team. We could get him for nothing. And that Josh Onoma, who was at like Preston North End and Spurs and all the rest of it, he's apparently got a wee bit issues. Like he was them up. So he's been without a team since the summertime. So, but there's a few players out there that we could have a go at.
So Marcus, coming to you, the 2 players that Dave said, did the centre back defensive mid hybrid or the centre mid attacking mid hybrid jump out at you a bit more?
Well, I've never heard of these players, so I can't really. I mean, I can't say no. They sound okay on paper, but if
I'll just make it up.
I don't know if the first one sounds okay on paper. I can't even pronounce his name. But Greg, do you think that attacking midfielder, do you think that's the type of player that is that the profile of player we'd be wanting to bring in?
I'd say so, yeah. But I do like the sound of the centre half. I think if you can get someone with a bit of pedigree who's got a lot of potential, that's exactly what we're looking for. But yeah, well done, Dave. Thanks for taking it seriously.
Thanks, pal.
Well, there you go, Dave, taking it seriously. Wonderful stuff. And the last of our guests to present his players today, Leon, we're coming to you. Where in the field, where in the team do we need to improve, and what players are you after?
I think middle of the park's the biggest concern for everybody, mainly. Obviously, we'd look a bit shaky at the back at times, but it's definitely been improved on with the management. And I think Hibs should be all over Greg Docherty at Hull. He's barely kicked the ball. He's played 10 games this season. Came on as a sub in the last game, but like 15 minutes to go. He's getting little minutes and just can't get in the side. And I think he would make a massive impact in our team.
Greg Docherty, Brian, thoughts on Greg Docherty? Used to be at the club, obviously.
Yeah, I think he's proved at various clubs in Scotland that he's a good player at this level. Strong ball carrier, athletic, does well between the 2 boxes, which is exactly what you need when you're playing in a 2. Very robust, good ball winner. Good all-round player. Would fit into the team pretty well, I would say. Fairly popular amongst the fans as well.
And Liam, any potential downsides to Greg Docherty, or do you think that it would be relatively safe if we could get that on the go?
I think the only potential downside, it was a very short loan spell he had was, but everyone seems to recall that derby against Hearts, which was the last game obviously before COVID, and that seems to be kind of held against him on his time at Hibs, and everyone seems to disregard the other 7 or 8 games. I think the major upside with Greg Docherty is not just how he gets about the park, but the fact he can absolutely ping one for about 25 yards as well. And see, having centre midfielders that can do that in your team, but can also do all the other stuff, is just so valuable because it forces defenders out to go and close them down, opens up gaps in behind if you know they've got someone who's got that in their arsenal. So Greg Docherty, if we could make that happen, it'd be an absolute no-brainer for me. He might want to come home. His wages are high, but they're not ridiculously high. If his reported wages are correct, £8,000 a week, probably just about creeps within our current wage structure. I think it's a total no-brainer for Hibs if we could make it happen.
Well, Ian, you got a popular first player, so let's go for number 2.
I've been wanting a player and want Hibs to look at them for a while, but I'm not going to say him because Hearts are about to sign him, and it's absolutely grating on me that he's got to go there because I've been saying it for ages, and I just have a horrible feeling when he's going to go there and do really well. So I had to look at a few other players. I think central defence is probably to be looked at, but I'm wanting us to score more goals. So I think another player who's been getting a lot of sniffs around the first team at Celtic, but not enough, and they are about to strengthen in January 100%, because I think Hibs should look to try and get Mikey Johnson, and I think he gets mentioned loads, but I really do think he's ready for a move. He's not going to go on loan. I mean, I might take a loan, but I doubt it. You'd have to actually try and go and sign him. It would probably cost you a bit of money. Whether Hibs are willing to pay, that's a different thing. But I think a player like him could be another big positive in the side. Somebody with real end product, because I think that's what we're lacking a wee bit at the moment. We've got a lot of players who are coming in out of games and stuff, but I think he could add a lot to your side. I mean, whether Hibs could get him in, it's a different story, right? He's maybe want to go to the Championship and whatever else, but just talking in general about it, I think if you could pull somebody out of the league, again, somebody that's experienced in the league, I'd go for somebody like him.
Marcus, you suggested a Celtic player. Obviously, Leon suggested a different Celtic player there. What do you think of Mikey Johnson?
I wouldn't be against him in the squad. I would just worry about I quite like Tavares on the left, and obviously, like, Yuan would be playing out there as well. I just don't know. I don't know if Johnson has the versatility to be able to play on the right if we want to shift things around. But for his career, if he's wanting to play regularly for Ireland, it would be in his best interest as well, because I don't think he's got a future at Celtic at the minute. So potentially, but I would just worry about depth on the wing, and I'm personally not too convinced. Like, even this spell he's had at Celtic, I know Rodgers has played him a few times, but I think bar the game they had at Dundee, I don't think he's done too much. So
yeah. McBee, any thoughts on Mikey Johnson? Is that something that you'd be for?
The last 10 minutes of the Ugly Sisters game the other week there, he was minging, right? Like, his defensive work was absolutely atrocious, and he got an absolute roasting for the boy Greg Taylor at left back, which, if you're getting the roasting for Taylor, you must be doing something horribly wrong as well, because he's not exactly a player. So that's what immediately sticks in my mind. That being said, I don't know if you're asking him to do that work, like, you know, and say to him,
Jenkins a better player than Tavares?
As much as I like the story arc of Tavares now, I think Tavares is as good as what we're all making out, you know, as well. So I definitely think there's an opportunity for an upgrade there in that position, without a doubt. As much as I like the laddie, and as much as I'm delighted to see him getting the run of the team and get a wee bit of luck, but that still being said, I still think we're able to improve massively, which is why I'm going for Danny Armstrong on the right, Ewan on the left, and Boyle up front, mate. I'm not budging for that. So now Mikey Johnson can piss off.
So if you're putting you on that team, you can do what you want.
That's it.
So a couple of guys sticking to Scotland, a couple of guys, one Scotland and then abroad, and then Dave just kind of throwing accurate darts across Europe and hitting some nice ones. And just before we come to Liam, myself, and Ryan, just a couple of Twitter comments that we got in. Greavesy sent in, if we are only able to target loans this month, let's aim for experience in two areas. Played in Scotland and done well, i.e. Van Veen, Greg Docherty types, has experience playing 4-4-2, seen it as the shape isn't changing. Bring back Megwart rather that than an unproven loan. So just kind of breaking down the two players that he's mentioned that we've not discussed. Van Veen, Leon, come to you on that first. An attacking option, obviously a fellow Dutchman that could potentially partner up with Vente. Would you like the idea of Van Veen coming in?
I'd give my right arm for Van Veen at Hibs now. 100%. I didn't know if we're in the market for him, because I think there is a lot of chat about Rangers being snipped about him, and I think it is quite concrete, to be fair, because he would fill a squad space for him, no bother at all. But if we could sign Van Veen, I think he could be a big part of the puzzle up top for even getting Vente involved. He carries the ball really well, he holds the ball up really well, he invites players into his areas to play. And I think he's got to go for it. Now, I know he's only had folk can argue and say he only had a bit of purple patch, but it was some purple patch he had before he left. You know what I mean? He's continued to score goals in Holland, but just no plays well. And I think maybe he's got a bit of attitude. I think he's got a bit of I think coaches can fall out quite easily, which is also a concern, but I don't think Monty's a guy that you would know what to play for, eh?
Yeah. And then the second player, Dave, I know you're quite familiar with the young players coming through at Hibs. What's the thoughts on Meg? What do you think that him staying out on Airdrie? Obviously, seems every time a weekend passes, he's got another man of the match under his belt. Do you think it's good for his growth to stay there? Do you think with Miller kind of dipping in form, it'd be the right idea to bring him back, and then that maybe frees up budget as opposed to spending money on the right back?
No, I would rather leave him where he is. I think, and I was discussing this with someone else the other day there. I can see exactly what's going to happen, and he has played really well in Airdrie, and I've seen a couple of certainly seen highlights and a bit of the games. And he's no doubt he's got a talent, but he's playing for Airdrie now, right? And he's doing really well, and he's learning his trade and all the rest of it, right? 3 or 4 games ago, Miller was the best right back we've had in donkeys. He has 2 bad games and he's utter shit. And I can just imagine what, Megwa comes in, has 2 bad games, and the Hibs fans will be like, oh, he's nowhere near good enough, we need to get rid of him and all the rest of it. Just let him learn his trade, give him another 6 months at Airdrie, fill out a bit, come back, and then he'll be ready to start playing next season. There's nothing wrong with getting a full year of proper experience rather than maybe getting 10 minutes here and there.
Or these 2 words as well. What is it? Not ready. That's the one we're hearing about young Rory now as well.
Exactly.
Aye.
I think protecting players and giving them the opportunity, as you say, to actually develop, I think is a really big thing. So what are you saying there, McBee?
I was going to say, if you're looking at right backs, the lad that was at Aberdeen that went down to Liverpool, Calvin Ramsey, he's just had his loan terminated by Preston as well. If what I read, he's been unlucky just with injury and then illness, but it looks like he's ready. So, if you're taking a punt and somebody that played in Scotland and done well in Scotland, it could be worse shouts.
Oh, definitely. Then a couple on the YouTube. Paul Haldane said Ali McKen should have been Hibs' first pick for midfield. Unfortunately, his contract's been extended at Preston North End. And then Danny Stewart said, I like Montgomery, but concerned our attacking options are struggling with system, Vente and Ewan in particular. Would love to see it come good because bringing Bacchus, Egan Riley, Kukarevich and Beck would be good options. I'm not going to mention players that have been there before because Hibs fans know who they are and we've seen them play. Bacchus and Beck. Obviously, Beck got recalled because I think they've got a bit of problem. Liverpool have got a bit of problem at left back. Could we potentially see a Harry Clark situation where we pinch a loan that's been good in the league that then comes to the club? I assume Owen Beck, Greg, if I come to you on that one, would appeal.
Yeah, look, he done well at Dundee. I don't think he's been recalled for anything other than Liverpool are maybe struggling in that area, but I'd definitely like to see him at Hibs. But I don't think it's an area we really need to strengthen. I think Obita's been good. There's far more pressing matters in the squad that we need to address rather than a left back, because for me, Obita's been very good. And Stevenson's put an adequate standing, so it's not a position that we actually need.
And Ryan, another name that was mentioned there, Bacchus. Do you think the type of player he is, he would help fix our midfield?
He'd maybe go some way towards it. I think Liam touched on teams playing with a midfield 3. He's probably more suited and accustomed to playing in a 3. So I haven't seen him in a 2. I haven't seen kind of how athletic and how dynamic he can be in between the boxes. However, he is a very good player and would be an improvement on the squad as a whole. I quite like the look of him. And no coincidence that St Mirren have been doing well this season and he's been a part of it, along with Mark O'Hara, who's also a very good player.
And Liam, you're on mute, my friend.
The downside of someone like Bacchus is you'd be in the same situation you are with Boyle and Miller. They're away on Asian Cup duty till probably the middle of February, so it becomes a difficult deal to first get over the line and then you don't have them available for quite a period after you sign him. I think he's maybe out of contract in the summer, and I don't think there's any talk of him extending with St Mirren, so it's maybe one of those where you sort of just put the feelers out and try and get him in the summer. I definitely think he's got the athleticism. Whether he's good enough on the ball or not to play in a 2, I couldn't really say, in all honesty, because I've not really seen enough of him being asked to do that, because he's not the one who usually sort of sits and takes the ball off the centre halves for St Mirren. We leave that job to someone else. So potentially, yes, would be a good option.
And we're going to get back to the Zoom call and the options that we've been chatting through. And next up, we're going to come to Mr. Melville. Ryan, what are we thinking? What positions need filled, and who are you going to bring in to fill them?
I've only went for one player, based off the fact that we've given plenty over the course of the season so far. So I think we need a long-term solution at left centre half. I know we've got Paul Hanlon's biggest fan on the podcast here, but I think there has to be a longer-term solution as opposed to maybe playing a right-footed player out there. So I've went for Tom McIntyre at Reading. His contract's up in the summer. It's somebody that McDermott will know really well and obviously have links to the club. Really good on the ball. He can sometimes play kind of in that sixth position, so that would suggest that he has those ball playing qualities. Obviously, with his contracting up this summer, I don't think it would demand a massive fee, and Reading are in financial trouble as well. So there is obviously downsides to this. So he's had quite a few injuries that he's been out of the game for a long time, and I'm sure he's got many offers down south as well to kind of stay in around that area. But I mean, he's been capped at Scotland under 21 level as well. So I mean, he's obviously a player of quality and a player that's been rated throughout his career.
Hey, Dave, as mentioned, you are Mr. Hanlon in a Hibs fan form. Do you think it is about time that we bring in an adequate replacement? Not to jump in the team and completely push him out, but do you think that should be like part of our main contingency plan moving forward?
It's always been the plan to replace him. We've just never done it. And that's why he's continued to play game after game after game and played with injuries and all the rest of it, right? And now we're still playing a player who's nowhere near as good at him. And he's playing just because he's a wee bit faster. So, you lose any ability to come out on the left-hand side when you play a right-sided player there who's not got really the technical ability to do it. I've not seen enough of Tom McIntyre. I will go away and watch him, but he's left-sided. He's playing at a decent level, a great age. So there's plenty of time there to make money on him as well. So he's a player that could probably come up and do 2 or 3 years and we could still sell him on for $1 million or so. So, yeah, I think it's a good one to look at. And it's, it makes financial sense as well, yeah. Like it.
Cheers, Dave, my man.
But not until next season, until Paul decides he's going to hang up his boots or move on,
And as always, if it comes to centre backs on the pod, I go to no one else other than Greg himself. Greg, McIntyre, big thumb up from you.
Yeah, definitely. You can play centre back, defensive midfield, which obviously isn't a position that we really need, but you can be versatile. Decent pedigree, played these games. I'd be more than happy to see him come up here. And with the Brian McDermott link, I think probably one that we're looking at, to be honest, I would imagine.
And then, unless any other comments, we will come to you next, Liam. And you are muted again.
Fuck's sake, man! We didn't normally mute ourselves. That's the problem. I've only really got one player I want to talk about, and it's maybe a wee bit of the left field shout. And there's a bit of recency bias at play because I watched them on Friday night, and that's what's made me want to tout them. Those of you who join me every week know that I love the Friday night games in the Scottish Championship. And player who was at Hibs and who's impressed me previously when he's played against Hibs is Rory Payton. He was at Hibs as a youngster. He's kind of done that sort of thing where he's had to go down the leagues, had to go back to full-time work when he was at Stranraer, and then has kind of subsequently worked his way back up the leagues with Queen of the South, where the sort of first season maybe sort of struggled a wee bit with that transition back into full-time football. But the last couple of seasons, he's really stepped up a gear or two. He's only 23 years of age, so still fairly young, as David would like to say, a great age.
Great age.
And I think there's still quite a lot of developing in there, quite raw. He's obviously someone Hibs let go when he was 17, so we saw something in him in the first place to bring him over from Ireland. He's kind of gone away. He's really had to graft. To make B's point about Lewis Vaughan, he's really had to graft to kind of get himself back up the leagues. He's now playing the Championship at Queen's Park every week. He has played virtually every single minute for Queen's Park this season in the Championship. They have been struggling. The Friday night was their first win since the end of August, so they have really, really been stinking the gaff out for quite a long time. He's sort of been the one shining light in their season, scored 10 goals in 19 appearances, averages a goal every 170 minutes, which in the Championship, is not far away from the record that Kevin Nisbet had when he signed for us. But what I wouldn't want to say is he's not a similar type of centre-forward to Nisbet. He's probably a more mobile centre-forward, but maybe sort of a less, kind of finessed than Nisbet. Nisbet maybe a bit more of a sort of composure, kind of maybe a little bit better sort of back to goal, but Peyton's more of a sort of mobile, will run the channels, will do all the donkey work, maybe do some of that work that Venti's doing just now that we don't really want Venti to be doing, take some of that workload off him. I think he's a player who Queen's Park did pay a fee for him in the summer, so we would obviously have to pay to get him out of there, but I think it's a perfectly gettable transfer target for Hibs. And I'd say at the age of 20, I think there's still a huge amount of developing to be done.
You put forward a very good argument. The main thing I would say is if we were only going for one target, would a striker type be the main objective for this window? Is that the type of player you want to bring in? Obviously, Mark has mentioned we've got a couple of injuries in that department.
But we're not only going for one target. We need more than one player, and I think the reality is we need to sign 3 or 4. And I think centre forward would be probably second or third on my list, in all honesty, because we're not scoring goals at the moment. We're not scoring enough goals at the moment, and I think he would be someone who could potentially come in and start. And obviously, you'd see how he kind of fits in amongst the pecking order. But I think he's a lot more mobile than Doidge, and I think that we saw in the game against Motherwell, perhaps, that Doidge's sort of early season form, he's not really been able to refine that since Montgomery's come in for whatever reason. And actually, I think a lot of that goes down to the fact that we do need someone who is a little bit more mobile in there to do some of that work that unfortunately Venti really, since probably the Celtic game, has been kind of shouldering a lot of that responsibility to come deep and kind of put defensive sort of pressure on their ball receiver from the centre halves. So I think he's the guy for me who could come and do that. I like a player who's on an upward trajectory as well. You know, his career is very much on the up. I think too often we have a habit of signing players on the way down, and I just don't think that having too many of them at the club is a good thing.
Yeah. Anybody else know Rory Payton enough to comment to that? And by the way, big shout out to Liam. I'm a fan of how Liam watches the Friday night championship games religiously.
It's class, man. The games are always good.
Class.
Well, not always. There's some shockers in there, but the games generally last while have been whilst they're not a great standard, they're always entertaining to watch.
And Leon, I see you've unmuted.
I was just going to say it's fantastic work for Liam. Loads of good info there, and I'm all for it. I mean, he's spot on about the goals. I mean, the big chat is about Venti no scoring, it's about Boyle no scoring, and I think it's key getting the right player up there to then unlock everything else. And I think that's what we're missing. Doidge, as much as I loved him, I was disappointed how he played against Motherwell, and I thought he could have been that wee bit we were missing with the way he travels with the ball, hugs up the ball and stuff, and causes open space with he's just getting in about it up there. And I think if we get somebody up there that can be the difference, it'll open up a lot more.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair. And then I've, of course, saved the best to last, which is, of course, me. So personally, I think the main problem with Montgomery's system, in terms of the squad that we have, I think that defensively, as we've kind of touched on, we're playing players. We're playing at least one player on their weak foot. Obviously, Bashiri, for the most part, has been starting over Hanlon. And I think personally, I'm on the side of I think Bashiri's actually had a pretty good season. I think obviously there's a couple of clangers, but I think he's been good for the most part. However, in my opinion, if you can pack a punch, you do pack a punch. And I'm going for a player who some of you might be familiar with, and Ryan, I'll get you to correct my pronunciation if I get it wrong, but he plays for Derby. He's a centre-back, and his name is Eiran Kashin, first name Eiran. Eiran, is that right? Did I get that right?
Unless it's written down, I can't correct you, I'm afraid. I don't know what you're trying to say.
Fine, well, that sounds right, Eden. Anyway, he's a centre-back. He has been capped 4 times for Ireland under-21s. He's been a real leader for Derby. He has kind of been brought up through their system, and I just think he's a really powerful player. He's not shy at all when it comes to tackling. He's good with the ball at his feet. Obviously, Derby have had a pretty good season. They find themselves in 4th, have conceded the joint least goals in League One. In terms of standard, I think he's probably relatively similar to what we've seen from Frankie Kent at Hearts, in the sense that he's relatively competent with the ball at feet and is definitely not afraid to get stuck in the air. He's a type of profile that I think Hibs should be looking at, 22 years of age. hasn't really played. He's never played anywhere else apart from Derby. So if he is wanting to move to a slightly higher level, I would say that if he can get Hibs into Europe, then it's probably a move in the right direction for him, as it would be for us. Obviously, on the Down the Slope podcast, we made it clear as well we want Hibs to be tapping in a bit more into their Irish side. So getting a player that's got some Irish representation as well never goes amiss for myself. Any comments, or is anybody else aware of Cashin? And has he been on anyone else's radar? If no is the answer, that's fine. Liam, what are you thinking?
I know of him. I don't think I've ever seen him play, to be honest. I think anyone who's playing for Derby, who are probably going to be a championship club next season financially, is probably going to be out of our reach unless Bill Foley wants to pony up on a young Irish centre half who could potentially develop for Bournemouth. But I think Cashin looks like a good prospect, certainly on the face of it. He's obviously come through an academy at Derby County who have actually traditionally probably produced quite a lot of good young centre defenders and defenders in general. But I think financially it's probably going to be a bit of a stretch for us.
Well, my thinking is, as I've said before, we've got the money for Villa, which apparently was an absolute goldmine for the club. I got told by a certain someone when we were over in Luzerne, if we get through that tie, we're going to have loads of money. So after the Villa game, goodness knows how much. We've obviously punted Melkerson for a decent chunk of money. Foley's been like psh, 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 with the cash as well. So I'm thinking, let's get splashing. And then I thought, you know what, Cashin, he's 100% bought, so we've got him. And then I thought, you know what, I love me a bit of LAU, and I love a player that's going to come on. He might not do everything you need him to do, but he's going to be involved in goals. He's going to get assists. He's going to score. So I scoured, guys. I scoured Europe. I've been looking at leagues all over the shop. I've done a couple in South America, and I thought this is stupid. So I went back to Europe again. And I found a boy. So he started off in South Africa as part of Ajax's Cape Town team. Never knew that existed until I started this. This is great fun, guys. You should look into it yourself. But he was touted a few years back as one of these prospects that's going to come to Europe and be quite good in a few years. He has found himself in the Allsvenskan, the Swedish top flight. He got 10 goals and 10 assists at winger last season, and his name is Tashreeq Matthews. And from everything that I've seen, he plays for a team called Sirius. He is an absolute baller. I love the fact that Dave is instantly on the Googling for the boy. In terms of his scout reports, it's pretty much a mirror image of what Ellie Yuan is. In terms of his contribution further up the field, he's just very good. He's an exciting, dynamic player that's going to get touches in and around the box. He loves to drive at players. He loves to get to the byline, cut it back. He loves to waste quite a lot of shots. He's the type of player that you'll probably see him hit 4 or 5 shots a game, maybe nab one. But he's this exciting player that if he did come to Hibs, it would get everybody on their feet and everybody would be dead excited. So that would be the only thing is I think we'd probably have to push the boat out slightly to get him, because he has had such a good season. But that's a profile of player. Sometimes it's not the players that we discuss that we're going to buy in these episodes, but it's the kind of profile that I would like to see. So yes, Tashreeq Matthews, very exciting South African youngster, only 23 years of age. So again, fits that profile for me. If you're under 25 and you're a raw product, I'm more than happy to see you come in. I do still think that the squad's missing maybe 3 players that I'd like to see us bring in over January and the summer that are between that like 25 to 31 bracket. I do think that we are missing a bit of leadership in the team that's not quite been there. But in terms of young prospects, Tashreeq Matthews, that's my boy.
Harry, you had me at Ajax's South African team, but I'm all for it.
Nice. Dave, after your very brief internet search, are you on board as well?
1.8 million and he's in contract till 2026. So yeah, we better start splashing that cash.
Exactly, mate. That's what I'm saying. We've got the money to spend. That's Melkerson's replacement right there. Sorted.
Well, he's definitely got a decent background, like, and he's in Dortmund and that for a while as well. So he's learnt his trade at the other right places. So interesting he's not in the South African national squad. Well, he's only got as fast as the 21st, and that's it. Wonder who's keeping him out. Benny McCarthy.
Oh, the man is still on fire. But yeah, so guys, as mentioned when we just started the segment, so now we've got the task over the next 5 to 10 minutes, however long it takes us, to kind of break down and unanimously agree on 3 players from all of those that have been discussed that we would take in our ideal January window. I'm going to start off by saying I think Nisbet is probably a player that we could definitely all get behind. I don't think we'll have any disagreement there. Liam, you're unmuted, so I'll come to you. Are you in
Well,
agreement?
I think it's one in Nisbet or Doherty. I think that's where the decision lies. I don't think you sign both unless you've got the option to.
All right, so
Suddenly got the money to.
let's do this. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll get the fun of this. If you're not, then I'm sorry that you're going to be sat in silence for a couple seconds. So you guys use your left hand if you would be pro Doherty, and use your right hand if you would be pro Nisbet.
Just watch what you do with that left hand though when you raise it.
Yeah. Do backwards. All right.
That's right hand, just in case you're not sure, Harry.
He
That's
doesn't
right,
ken, does
okay.
it?
There's no idea what
This is being so you'd be Doherty, is that right?
Yeah.
Just say put your hand up if you're going for Nisbet.
That's a good.
Aye.
Yeah, put your hand up if you're
Aye,
pro
aye,
Nisbet.
Dave's a man.
Yeah, see, he's a smart guy. Pro Nisbet over Doherty.
Only because of age.
Liam, you'd be Doherty over Nisbet.
I do like the sound in this bit, but I think Greg Doherty's proven in this league, and if you're talking about a player who's going to come in for 4 or 5 months and make an instant impact between now and the end of the season, who's the more surefire hit? Nisbet maybe in the summer as a project to build, but Greg Doherty will come into this team, he would just improve it. Like we know that he would, based upon his time. I don't think there's a more surefire January signing, maybe other than CG Egan Riley, as a player that would come in who would improve you straight away.
Yeah. And then in terms of, I reckon we can only take one of Dave's two. I think we're probably all in agreement that both of those players sounded quite exciting. And are we probably all in agreement that we'd take the centre back defensive mid hybrid? I think we all got a bit excited about that one, to be honest. So say his name again, Dave.
Mate Peltolo.
That name, yep. Any disagreements there? Would they get into our top 3?
5-year deal for me, like.
Make it happen. Come on, Ben.
And Marcus, who would you tee up? So if we've got our centre back there, we've got our midfielder there. What's the forward option that you were most inclined by?
Probably Danny Armstrong. I was convinced by. I do think maybe on the kind of right side, right winger side, we maybe need a bit more. And he's obviously proven the league as well, which we're all agreement is a good quality in a signing. So
yes, mate, love it.
Nice. So Mick B's been backed up. So it so happens that what we've learned from this episode is when we get guests on, they scout much better than we have, because all of our players have been stumped, boys. We put 4 options forward and they were all disregarded. But we had good fun putting these together. And hopefully, if Hibs come to the end of this window and they sign 3 high caliber players to that level, as well as the boy that we're currently looking at from Leeds, then I think we'd all be pretty satisfied with the window. We'll quickly go around and we'll say our minimum expectation for what the window is, and then we can properly wrap up. So McBee, come January 31st or whatever day the window ends, because I know they sometimes put it a bit into February. What's your minimum expectation from a Hibs perspective, business-wise?
Business-wise, that the bench doesn't look like a crash.
That is fair. Marcus, I'm just working around my screen here, so what's your minimum expectation?
4 or 5 signings minimum. If we're going to take loans, make it at least 1 or 2 loans. I want something to build on come the summer and not just have to do another rebuild then, to be honest.
Greg?
Quality that can come off the bench, really. Like McBee said, like you need that quality to come off the bench to change it up a bit. Like we've been seriously lacking in recent weeks and months. So, but you also need a couple of starters to come in as well, I think.
Leon?
So I feel like the squad's improved. When we look at when that window shuts, that we look at that squad and be like, the club's definitely improved that squad this month.
Ryan?
I'd be looking for 3 players that instantly improve the quality of the squad as a whole, whether they start or whether they're on the bench when we or maybe need to bring players off the bench during games, that it doesn't dilute the quality of what's on the pitch.
Liam?
Three players, like a left-sided centre half, a centre midfielder that we just talked about, and a striker. Those three players I'd be quite happy with. I'm not really interested in us doing loads of business around the edges because I don't think it really helps. I'm not really interested in us signing players to sit on the bench, squad players, because I don't think it really helps. Wiseman once said that if your roof's broken and you've got a leak, no point in changing your curtains. You know, you've got to fix ultimately what the problem is, and I don't see the point in us signing a bunch of wingers and right backs and left backs. We need to sort out the spine of the team.
Is this you subtly asking for Bojan to come back, Liam? Is that?
I wonder
I
if
was
anyone
gonna
would have
say-
that angle. Like,
I realised that Lee Johnson had lost his job and never really
Well-
got a gig it down the slope. That's incredible.
a well-known Hibs fan did once tell me that Bojan is better than Yuan, so maybe it couldn't be the last thing bringing him back. No, I think in all seriousness, like with that, the spine of the team is where the problem lies, and I think if we could get those three positions filled with quality players, I think we could still have a very, very good season.
It's quite worrying having to deal with the spine of the team in January, though. Like that is
Yeah.
like, aye.
It is, but I think that's what happens when you change a manager out with a transfer window. Is you ultimately are going to put yourself in a position where you need to completely rejig the squad. And we'd like to think that Hibs knew this was coming when they changed manager in September. I'd like to think we were preparing for this. And I'm not one of those people who's like 8th of January, why have you not done any business? Because I appreciate these things take time, but I'd like to think there's things that we're working on now in those positions as well. Because what I'll be really disappointed is if we sign two players and our first two signings are a backup goalie and a fullback, because I don't think that's really what we need.
Dave, what's your thoughts on it?
I think it's been covered. Spine of the team is exactly what we need. And it is a bit of a shame that we allowed a manager with, well, I don't even remember starting that. We've wasted a ton of money with him trying to put together what he was trying to put together. So the guy needs time to put in what he needs. So yeah, exactly what you said. Some of the players I mentioned would be decent. I think it will be loans though. I can't see us making much in the way of full signings. I think Matti Peltolo is the only one we're going to sign on the 5-year deal, and that'll be perfect. There was one guy just before I think you're going to wrap up, right? But it's Lorient is the other team that were, or Lorient, right? They've got a boy called Romain Faver, who apparently Bournemouth were talking about taking back off loan. Now, in my head, I suddenly obviously thought, well, I wonder if they're taking him back because we're going to have a go at him. He's like 25 million quid or something, some French laddie. They reckon he wasn't ready for Bournemouth yet. So that would be nice because he had an attacking mid who has basically been the only guy that's doing anything for them this season. So if we could get him, that could solve a lot of our issues.
So come the end of January, we want a bench that what was the word you used, McP?
It doesn't look like a crash, mate.
Doesn't look like a crash. And we want 4 to 5 signings overall. We want the spine of the team fixed. We want a £25 million man on loan from Bournemouth. And we also want a couple of players as well towards the future. So we're not just kind of throwing shit at a wall and then when it falls off, doing the whole thing again come the summer. So yeah, low expectations there, Hibs, if you're listening in. So yeah, but everyone, thanks so much for listening. Excited to say our next episode is number 200, and we have lined up special guest who we think's pretty cool. Of course, isn't cool as Mick B, Dave, Marcus, or Leon, but is a pretty cool guest that we've got coming on. So we'll do a couple teasers about that on the old Twitter. So definitely keep your eyes on that, and we will catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.